From being kicked out of his home at 13 to couch surfing until his senior year in high school, Jimmy Butler's story is anything but ordinary. Let's look at how a homeless kid from Tomball made it all the way to the NBA, and how his desire to keep moving forward made him the grittiest player in the league. This is the story of Jimmy Butler's rise from being homeless to being an NBA superstar. Jimmy G. Buck has famously told Brian Smith of Chicago Magazine in 2015 that he avoids discussing his past and upbringing, even going so far as to say that he had removed the rearview mirror in his car because he doesn't like looking back. But it is his past that we see the genius of the man he would one day become. At 13, Butler was kicked out of his house by his mom. With nowhere to go, he would stay with different friends, often moving every few weeks. Butler's father hadn't even been in the picture since his childhood, and Jimmy's growing reputation as a troublemaker only made things worse. It was at this time that Butler would spend all of his free time on the courts, likely because it was easier to get inside a gym than it was to get into a house. Around his senior year, Jimmy moved in with the Lamberts, a local family in Tomball, with 7 other kids, who took Butler in after he became friends with their son, on the condition that he would do chores and also improve his grades. Although Jimmy would be named first team All-District, averaging 19 points and 8 rebounds per game in his senior year of high school, he didn't receive any interest from D1 schools, likely because he never played AAU ball. Butler didn't despair and instead ended up going to Tyler Junior College, where he drew national attention with a series of 30 and 40-point games that astounded onlookers. By April 2008, Jimmy had offers from Marquette, Kentucky, Clemson, Mississippi State, and Iowa State. Butler chose Marquette, but soon enough, he would regret it. Head coach Buzz Williams pushed Jimmy hard and never let him rest. Multiple times, the practice sessions would leave Butler gasping on the floor and vomiting because of how hard he got pushed. His fitness and toughness, things he are well known for today, just weren't at a Division I level, and his coaches knew this. They would make Jimmy do constant defensive drills while also working with assistant coaches who would hit Butler with pads, forcing him to finish through contact. A lot of times, Butler was close to quitting. He thought that the head coach wanted to run him out of Marquette, but other coaches convinced Jimmy to stay and trust the process. It worked, and by his second year, he was a new man. The coaches had done a tremendous job with him. Before, he would be out on the court tiring himself out. This time, he was tiring his opponents out. He averaged 14 points and 6 rebounds in 34 minutes per game and distinguished himself as Marquette's most driven player, a far cry from last year when he wanted to quit and get it over with. Ever since his transformation at Marquette, Butler has been known as one of the hardest working players in basketball ever since. When the Chicago Bulls drafted Jimmy as the last pick of the first round of the 2011 draft, many fans were disappointed that the Bulls had chosen a defensive option rather than supplying Derrick Rose, their MVP point guard, with more offensive weapons. Although Butler would prove himself as a useful 3-and-D wing player over his first 3 seasons in Chicago, he was largely an afterthought behind players like Derrick Rose, Carlos Boozer, and Joakim Noah. However, starting in the 2014-15 season, Jimmy would explode onto the scene with stellar performances against top NBA teams, for which he was named as a reserve for the NBA All-Star Game. The Bulls went on to advance to the playoffs, where Butler set career highs against the Bucks, eventually closing them out in 6 games. The Bulls would go on to lose to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the second round, but Butler had proven his worth. Jimmy soon resigned with the Bulls for a 5-year, $95 million extension that must have seemed unreal for a man who had been living off charity for a long time. But he didn't let the money distract him. Butler knew that this was his chance to make a mark, and that it was only possible because of the hard work he had put in through the years. No way was he stopping now. Jimmy would continue his rise to the top when he got his first All-NBA selection in the 2017 NBA season. The highlights of the season included a brilliant 40-point performance against the Los Angeles Lakers, where he led a comeback down 15 points, and another 40-pointer, where he hit a 20-foot buzzer beater to give the Bulls 101-99 victory over the Brooklyn Nets. This season proved Butler was here to stay, and his season-high 52 points against the Charlotte Hornets reaffirmed this. After a failed retooling around Jimmy Butler, the Bulls decided to move on and traded Butler to the Timberwolves, where he was expected to change the locker room dynamics and bring more grit to the team. Jimmy's presence in the locker room caused many altercations with teammates, whom he considered soft and unfit for the NBA grind. His hilarious and absurd matchup against the starting 5 of the Timberwolves remains the stuff of NBA legends. He played alongside a bunch of the bench players and still beat the starting team. It reinforced the notion that Butler was all about the work and wouldn't take any BS while he was on the court. The experiment in Minnesota was ultimately a failure, even though the Wolves were able to get to the playoffs with Jimmy's help, where they would be eliminated in 5 games against the Houston Rockets. On November 12, 2018, Butler was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers, where he was expected to be the missing piece in Philadelphia's struggle to complete the process and win the coveted Larry O'Brien trophy. Initially, it appeared as if Jimmy was exactly what the doctor ordered, as in only his second game in Philadelphia, he made himself a fan favorite by drilling a clutch three-pointer with only 2.3 seconds remaining to give the 76ers a 2-point victory from behind. Butler served as the team's defensive anchor, while also providing valuable scoring alongside Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid. This allowed the Philadelphia 76ers to have a stellar season, where they reached the Eastern Conference semifinals and were only a Kawhi Leonard rim out away from a potential finals run. It wasn't meant to be, as the 76ers went on to lose Game 7, despite Jimmy's 16 points and dogged defense on the 2-time finals MVP Leonard. On July 6, 2019, Butler would start a new phase of his career with the Miami Heat. For the first time in his career, Jimmy was expected to be a franchise player. Before, he could have relied on Rose, Karl Anthony Towns, and Embiid, but now he had to step up or be destroyed by the competition. Jimmy being Jimmy, he intensified his training and came out with a fresh new focus for the 2019 NBA season, where he was being named Eastern Conference Player of the Week almost every other week because of his strong offensive and defensive showings. But it was the playoffs where Butler really showed how instrumental he could be in an NBA offense designed for him, where his abilities as a 3-and-D guy combined with his natural athleticism and slasher abilities formed a unique combination of lethal and precise offense. Jimmy also significantly improved his mid-range game and revitalized the art that had been made so popular by Jordan and Kobe. From the right wing alone, Butler shot at an absurd 40% clip, which was almost unheard of by any player besides the 2 GOATs of the modern era. After a normal first round of the playoffs, we got to see the Heat team in action against the number 1 seed, the Milwaukee Bucks. Although many analysts thought the Heat were toast against the Greek Freak and his squad, Miami defied all expectations and were able to control Giannis in the paint. The blueprint for how they stopped the Greek Freak still continues to be used today, with much less success because this particular Heat team was made up of the perfect length and athleticism needed to stop Giannis, which hasn't been the case ever since. Although this Heat team would lose in the finals to the Lakers, it remains a favorite team to revisit and rewatch their games. The determination in which they played together and Butler's leadership and drive during the finals remains a highlight for many. It isn't a coincidence that Jimmy's highest scoring games are often the biggest games of his career. Down 0-2 against the Lakers in 22? No problem. Have a 40-point triple-double. Down 3-2 against the Celtics in 2022? No problem. Have a 47-pointer with 9 rebounds and 4 steals to force a Game 7. Butler just does whatever it takes to win. Recently, he had his 8th 30-point game of the postseason, making it the most ever in a single postseason by a Heat player since LeBron in 2013. A sign that Jimmy is still at the top of his game and that he is as hungry as ever. What do you guys think of Jimmy Butler's story? Does he remind you of anyone else? If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to click this next one on the screen. Go ahead and click it. It's free.